Hello, Dinanda. How are you? I can hear you.
Hello,
Now I hear you. How are you?
I am fine, thank you, teacher, and you.
Good. I'm okay, yes. How was your day?
Excuse me, teacher?
How was your day?
Oh, my day was very tired, teacher, and especially with my new students, they are, I forget what, indisciplinados.
Okay. They are naughty, we could say. I'm going to write here. Naughty. Good evening, Clara.
Good evening, teacher and Dinalda. How are you?
Good.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Yes, nice to see you again, teacher.
Same. Well, Dinanda was telling us that she had a busy day today because she has new students at the school where she works. What course are
Okay.
you teaching, Dinanda?
Now I am teaching in first and second grade.
Okay, so they are about 6 and 7 year old, right?
Uh, age, teacher,
Yes, the
age.
age. Uh-huh.
Um, there are different age in my classroom, teacher. There are a student with 10 years old.
Oh, okay. Students who are 10 years old. Are they all from Colombia or do you have students from Venezuela?
I have one student from Venezuela, teacher.
Okay, well, hopefully you can rest a little bit tomorrow because we have the day off,
Me, teacher.
right? Oh,
Oh my God, I going to do my tax because
uh,
uh, I don't have understood. I don't have understood.
I didn't understand
As some topics teacher.
about English,
Excuse me, teacher.
about advanced English one or a
Yes,
different
teacher.
task.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to review what you studied last week. We're going to review that topic tonight. Magda, Gerson, and Karen, welcome to the encounter. Nice to have you back.
Thank you, teacher. Good evening.
Good evening, teacher.
Good evening. Well, we were having a short conversation with Nalda about her day. And as I just told you, we are going to review what you studied last week, which was the use of modal verbs to express possibility. What do you remember about that?
Most,
So we have must. What else?
may,
Could.
Could,
would,
might.
might.
And what's the difference between all those modal verbs?
There are featured. There are some featured possibility.
Uh-huh. But what is the difference between may, could, might, and must?
There are some possibility.
Uh-huh. what is the
Must.
Most is possibility. Is exactly possibility. Is
100%.
certain future.
Certain about something. Could be.
again? What did you
When
say?
we are
Gerson?
certain about something that we are going, for example, to get a result. So we expressed with must, right?
To express a result, probably based on evidence, right?
Right.
Anyway, it's a possibility. All of them are used to express possibility, but this one is when we have some evidence that help us to express that possibility, right? So let's say that in Spanish we could use es probable que, and we don't have to do these 4 different words. But in English we do have a difference, and it is related to the level of possibility. That is the idea.
Yes.
So the level of possibility is higher when we say must.
Teacher, like percent, maybe.
Yes, maybe. And the level of possibility with might and could is less than with must. So the order will be must is the level of possibility is higher, might, could, may. So that is the order regarding the level of possibility.
Teacher, are there other the modal verbs? Would?
Yes. But would is not used to express possibility. But yes, there are other modal verbs. Can, could. Okay, we have here could. We have can, would, and should also is a modal verb. Should, ought to.
Okay.
Yes. Patricia, welcome to the encounter.
Hi, teacher. Good night.
Hello. Well, the idea is that for the task that you had last week, you read some information about global warming and some alternative sources of energy. What do you remember about alternative sources of energy?
News.
I remember cool.
Well, yes, but Patricia, what are those alternative sources of energy that we can use to generate energy? Because tonight we're going to share some of that information. So what do you remember about that? Or what have you heard about alternative sources of energy?
As a renewable energy, we have wind, water, and electricity, right?
Okay.
Right.
Energy.
Well, water, we have sun, and we have wind. Exactly. Can we get energy from any other source?
Yes.
Yes. Fossil fuel, but it's not renewable.
Which one?
Some
From
energy.
fossil fuels, like, oil.
Okay, but those are not alternative. Those are
Sorry, yeah.
those are the common ones.
Yes. Which one? Nuclear energy.
Right?
Okay.
Yes.
Nuclear energy.
Food.
Well, that's biomass. That is, let's say, the trunks of the trees.
Carbon dioxide.
No, carbon dioxide is like the result of,
Contamination.
yes, is the
Okay.
result of
But
burning fossil fuels.
for example, I read that a company that was working on in taking the carbon dioxide to produce uh, to produce fuel, and they are trying to clean the the earth.
Exactly. So where is that company located, Karen? Is the one
It's
that
a
you guys?
Canadian company.
Uh-huh.
His name, yes,
It's a
is that
Canadian
is
company,
named Carbon Energy.
right?
They can capture the CO2 that produce an atmosphere. And in this plant demonstration can capture one 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 ton, teacher.
1 ton, yes.
Is
Mm-hmm.
more effective than the work that can do the 3 other plants.
The word is to capture tons of carbon dioxide, yes. They capture it, and what do they do with that? They capture it from the air, right? And what happens then? What is the idea of that company?
They use they use it to produce fuel,
Exactly.
and they are working since 2016.
Uh-huh. So since 2016, they have been working with that idea of taking from the air the CO2 and capture it, that CO2, and then changing it to obtain energy. Yes, they use some chemicals and some special processes.
Cool.
So it might happen that in the future, that technology could help us to reduce the CO2 that we generate or that we emit to the air. Good. Uh, what about let's say, Patricia, you read about
Car.
transportation, right? Or transport. What did you read about that, Patricia?
Okay. Okay, and transport represent 23% of global energy CO2 emission.
Uh-huh.
But the demand for transport is only going to increase.
right? So, and what is the possibility of or the idea related to transport according to the video that you watched?
Mm, the possibility, uh, um, the possible, the transport, the transport is viable. Uh, the electric car is
Mhm.
uh, very viable. How do you say viable?
Why? Why
Teacher,
is,
can I say something?
yes, Nanda?
Mm, about that is saying Patricia. They can do battery power can use long time. But I have a question, teacher. The
Yes.
electric is a problem that too about the pollution. So this solution is difficult for change this problem. I don't
Yes,
know if
so we
he,
have the problem of emissions of carbon dioxide in the means of transportation that we use. So maybe Patricia can tell us what is the difference between using a car filled with gasoline and using a car that uses a battery, an
Okay,
electric battery.
okay. There are three big difference, and the video talking about uh, manufacturing, driving, and disposal. Uh, Manufacturing, this means ensembles, materials, and driven an amount of gas emission, and disposal. We call recycle.
Uh-huh. And what's the difference between the CO2 that is generated when the gas car is produced compared to the CO2 emissions of manufacturing an electric car?
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes. So you mentioned that there are three important aspects. When we manufacture the car,
Yeah.
so it means that all the elements that are used to produce the car, the disposal, so the energy produced when the car doesn't work anymore, right? And also the energy generated during the life of the car. So there is a difference when a car made of gas or that works with gasoline is produced, is I mean all the parts that are necessary to produce the car that is made of gasoline compared to all the energy that is used to produce an electric car. I would like you to tell us what is the difference in terms of the amount of energy that is used for both processes. Is the same? Is higher for one or what happens there?
Um, the car gasoline and compare car electric is different. The elements to produce emission, gas emission,
And what's that difference?
and okay,
What process requires more energy and more emissions of CO2? No idea? Okay, let's see. I think Magda also read and watched that video. Did you, Magda? Magda, are you there?
Video number 2. Yes, video number 2.
Yes, so did you watch that video, Magda,
Transporting.
about transport?
With, yes, teacher. The transport. Yes.
Do you remember the information about the difference between producing a car made of gasoline or that works with gasoline and creating a car that works with a battery? Which process requires more energy and generates more carbon dioxide?
The difference in gasoline and battery electric are excuse me, is about gas emissions.
And which one
In
produces
the
more gas
carbon,
emissions?
the gasoline produced more
emissions.
Gas emissions and other effects contaminants. For example, in the environment, the smoke produces the gasoline is an contaminator effect. And another difference is about battery electric
Yes.
Is about in order to determine the amount of greenhouse gases produced for a specific time in a time frame. The consequence can be used uses to prepare actions for reduce the gas emissions in the environment emitted in a time period in the series.
Well, regarding the question that I asked about what process generates more carbon dioxide, because everything that we do generates carbon dioxide, every activity that we do, or every object that is made generates carbon dioxide in the production of that object. So if a car that is that works with gasoline is going to be built, it requires some parts, and that process generates carbon dioxide because energy is used to produce that car. So when we watch the video to compare what is the difference between the two processes, it says that the electric car uses additionally a battery, right? A lithium battery. And that lithium battery produces, in that process of making both cars, the battery electric car produces more emissions of CO2 because it has to produce that extra part that is the battery. But when we use a car that uses the battery, we don't need the gasoline that is transported, that is collected from a place that then is refined, that has a process for people to be able to use it for cars, and then is transported to different parts of. Do you guys hear me? Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, teacher.
Thank you. So I was telling you that refining, transporting, and the emissions produced by the burning of gas generate more CO2 than the process or than charging the battery of an electric car. If the energy used to charge the battery comes from an alternative source. So let's say that a person who has an electric car can charge his battery, and that energy comes from solar power or wind power or biomass, let's say. So if that energy that is used to charge the battery comes from an alternative source, then the electric car will be more clean in terms of the production of emissions of CO2. But in the process of manufacturing the car, in the process of making the car, the parts, etc., the battery electric car is emits more CO2 than the gas car. And in the disposal is the advantage of the battery car or the electric car is that the battery can be reused. While the parts in a car that is made of gasoline, when the car doesn't work anymore, cannot be reused. So that is the difference according to the video. Okay. Maybe Gerson, can you tell us about some alternatives regarding food? Gerson?
Yes, teacher, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Teacher.
Yes,
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay, I was saying that according to the video, so scientists found a way to create meat with a laboratory without harming any animals. It doesn't involve slaughtering of animals. I mean that we need to kill the animal, right? So the meat of the future could be lab-grown meat that is called like this, they call, and it could be moving into our favorite restaurant and store. That's what they said. It's so really important. So to reduce the impact that it costs. So the advantage is that this kind of meat doesn't require additional resources compared with other leaf raising requires 28 times more land and 11 times more water. I mean, of water is a major issue in the world raising livestock of cows, but an even bigger issue in the production of meat. So we could save more water by simply not eating the meat, you know? So it's one of the ways or the alternative that they have been working. So as part of this, I don't know if we can call it project, you know? So the idea is just, there are some companies that have created some hamburgers meat, but they said that they had been looking for something that can taste and look like the real meat. So how they create or how do they make it? I mean, the lab ground meat. First, they collect a muscle sample from an animal, then collect the stem cell from the tissue, multiply them dramatically, and then so bulk up, I mean gain weight to put on a muscle to form a bigger muscle, you know? So it doesn't require just to, I mean, it's going to grow up by itself. The tissue is going to grow up by itself, and we don't need to use we don't need to feed more cows. I mean, cows produce gas emissions that can affect the environment as well. So that's why it would be a good idea if they might create or they could create this kind of meat. But the idea is that a lot of companies can invest in this kind of projects and help the environmentally in a friendly way. It makes sense?
Do you guys have questions about that project? Well, actually, it's working nowadays in the United States. That company exists. That meat made in laboratories exist. So is something that is happening nowadays. So I don't know if any of you have questions for Gerson about this type of food.
If we see in the how we call it in the I don't know, I don't remember in the if we see, so there are so many companies that have created this kind of meat.
Yes. So there is not only one. There are
Study and that can provide our nutrition, new our body requires you know, can be replaced with
Check and Gerson. I was reading about that, and there is a factory or company that which has a hamburger with plant, like a
vegetable.
vegetable hamburger, vegetable. Thank you. With pig, a pig.
read about it. So it's interesting because it says that this meat contains the nutrients that our body needs. That's what I was explaining. So the idea is just to create a similar meat that use that laboratory that can be like fake or super. I don't know. Artificially probably, but it contains the nutrients that our body requires. That's why they said, but we are not sure. So we might wait until it happens.
Or can be vegan.
Well, it already happened in the USA. We don't have it in Colombia, but in the USA, that company exists and they sell those hamburgers that are made out of peas, the vegetable, or as Gerson mentioned, the cell of the cow. They take out the blood of the cow, they take it to a laboratory, they separate the muscle cells from the fat cells, and they use the mast cells, muscle cells. They put it in a place where they can reproduce, and after they reproduce, they have the hamburger, right? So it's made in the laboratory. They don't kill the cow. They just take the blood of the cow, and all the process is made in a laboratory to create the hamburgers. So it might happen that in the future we might try those type of hamburgers made in laboratories. And as Gerson mentioned, they are supposed to have all the ingredients, protein that the body needs, all the necessary nutrients that we need in our body. For me, that sounds like very strange because
Yeah.
in Colombia, we still eat a lot of fresh food, yes? While in the United States, they eat a lot of processed food. They open the can, they put it in the microwave oven, and that's what they eat. So nowadays, they are eating that food that is made in laboratories. But in Colombia, we eat fresh food, and that is, at least for me, is very strange. Well,
But as our population is growing, for sure we will need this kind of stuff. I mean, things that they are creating.
yes, that's the thing, that population is growing, and so there will be a time that it will be necessary to use other ways to feed people. And that might be one way that that could be used in different countries. Well, let's move to other topic, that is power generation. Karen Guevara, Karen Juliana, you read about that. What's that about?
Yes, teacher, give me a second.
Okay.
Really? Okay, here I have that a Canadian company named General Fusion aims to be the first company in the world to create a commercially viable nuclear fusion energy power plant that produces zero greenhouse gas emissions and only emits helium.
So what is the advantage of nuclear power to generate energy? What is that benefit or that advantage compared to the other ways to get energy? Other alternative sources like wind, like solar power, like biomass.
Well, I think that one advantage is that it doesn't produce CO2 because it only emits helium. So it doesn't contaminate like the CO2.
Besides, for solar power, we need sun all the time. And there are some places where there is no sun all the year round. Or there is no wind that there is not a powerful wind all the year round. So compared to other renewable sources of energy, the nuclear power to generate energy is it doesn't stop. We won't run out of that. It's something that is produced all the time. And what's the disadvantage? Why are not countries using nuclear power to generate energy? Why? Or
Excuse me, teacher, I didn't.
What might happen in the future so that the world starts using nuclear power to generate energy? What might happen in the future? Because currently, in the present, there are no energy produced by nuclear power. Why?
Well, I think that it is expensive to create a nuclear fusion energy power plant, and this is why it is only in a Canadian company. Well, it was in 2016. But I think that it is expensive, and this is why it isn't already in other countries, like for example in Colombia.
So right, it is expensive and it's not safe. It's kind of dangerous yet. The process that is explained in that reading. So they use
Yes.
they use deuterium, titanium, helium, and neutron, and that is, the combination of that is what produces the energy, but it's not safe yet. It's dangerous and it's very expensive. So in the future, probably with more research, that technology gets to be less expensive, and probably we can start using it.
Yes, I think that this alternative is a good alternative, but is too dangerous. For example, if we see here in Colombia, when was the project of Hidroituango, it looked like a good project that will help us to generate energy, but it wasn't like the project was thought to be, and is a disaster now. So if this power generation is not well done, it can be catastrophic, I think.
Yes, it can be dangerous for people. So it needs to be well planned. Uh, needs to be safe enough for people. So that's what you mentioned is a good example. Either Ituango was not well planned or something didn't work well, and now it's a problem. So that's a possibility when we use those sources of energy. Okay, let's move to other information. Clara, you read about
Yes.
depths, right?
Yes,
What's that?
yes, teacher, right. Is traffic energy bar system is a technology created in Puerto Rico for clean energy generation using the weight of vehicular traffic. It works when the tire or wheels cross over or um, a bar, a vertical bar. The weight of the car press down and then it goes up, and this movement generate an energy. Yeah, this advice also helps to decentralize energy generation, traffic calming device, traffic safety device, and job creation, local manufacturing and exports opportunity. This amazing advice.
So it's a possibility also to get energy when there are places with a lot of traffic, with a lot of cars. So they thought about those bars that could be located on the floors, so that each time the car passes over those bars, produces kinetic energy that is captured and then reused. So that's also something that is on the way of
Yeah,
being developed. Very good. Okay, Leonardo and Loren,
exactly.
welcome to the counter. I don't know if you read about any of the if options that were published in the virtual room, did you?
Yes,
Leonardo and Loren?
I read about the food.
Loren, you read about the food? Loren? Okay, what about you, Leonardo? Did you have the chance to read about any option that was published in the virtual room?
I don't know, teacher.
Okay.
What is what is the first?
Well, the thing was that I published some options for you guys to read and watch a video to discuss and share that information tonight. But, well, if you didn't have the chance to get the information, you can probably share with us any that you know about alternative sources of energy, or your predictions, or what you think might happen in the future regarding carbon dioxide or global warming.
Hmm, global warming?
Yes, what have you heard about it? Or
The,
what do you think might happen in the future regarding that problem that we have?
the action of the action of people could be dangerous to Earth because um, a lot of devices that people use um, uh, made that the Earth is in continuous change warming. The For example, the use of cars, motorcycles, uh, the the um, the constant use of devices, um, the dioxide emissions, for example, in the vehicles.
Is the word that you want to say? Increase is that we have more and more, that we produce more and more carbon dioxide. Increase.
Increase. Okay. Mm,
But Leonardo, we just shared some information about technological options that might help us in the future. Do you think that we might get some of those technological solutions to help us with the problem?
um, for example, in the case of vehicles, the electric cars, electric uh, motorcycles in the future could be a solution for global warming.
Mhm. So maybe in the future we might have help from technology to decrease, which is the opposite of increase, to decrease the levels of CO2, maybe, right? Okay.
Yes, decrease.
Lauren, what about you? Did you have the chance to read any of the options that were published? Natalia?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, what did you read about?
Okay. Well, as it's like a not real food. Well, I cannot share the idea of having not might be useful for all of us. And I don't know. I think that it's not a difficult process to create it. It looks like easy, and yes, well, that's a good way to save resources.
Do you remember why is that an option that would reduce emissions of CO2?
Tell me.
Why is it an option to reduce CO2 emissions? If we compare the food that is made in labs to meat, that is the regular meat, why is the laboratory meat an option to reduce the levels of CO2?
Well, it will be made by like cells. Well, it will be great. I mean, it doesn't have to need a process like a real cow. So it doesn't need like food or any other things. So it
So when we
will be well, yes, like a creation. I don't know.
so we don't need the land for cows. Cows won't produce the gas that they produce when they poo. So that is polluting that type of gas. We won't use transportation to get cows from one place to the other, and all the energy uh, that is spent in the process of producing the meat or taking all the parts of the cow to get the meat. So all that energy that is spent in the process of raising the cow and taking it to the final consumer will be reduced to the energy that is necessary to produce the meat in a laboratory. Well, any of you have questions or comments about these options to reduce emissions? Other topic that you studied in Dexway last week was the use of quantifiers, what you see on the screen. So all those words are used to express quantity. When, for example, when we describe graphs, when we get to conclusions regarding numbers, when we have a research and we want to compare the results, so we can use those quantifiers. So you see that on the left we have 100% and 0%. And next to it, in front, we have the quantifiers that express if we are talking about 100% will be all, a little bit less will be nearly all, a little bit less will be most. In the middle, we have many, a lot of, and some. And on the opposite side, we have not many, a few, hardly any, or none, no one. So if we want to use those words, for example, to get to conclusions regarding some graphs, let's use this one. In this one, you see that on the top, on the bottom, we have student 1 to 10. We have average for Colombians. On the left, we have the kilograms of emissions of CO2. And the colors represent emissions caused by transportation, by home actions, by actions regarding food, what we eat, and actions regarding what we buy, purchases. So an average of a Colombian, or in average in Colombia, we should spend at about 100% in purchases per year, regarding what that means in terms of emissions of CO2. So when we buy, for example, a new jacket, new pants, so all the energy that is that generates is measured in terms of kilograms. So in a year, in Colombia, we should spend an average of 100, more or less, of kilograms in that process. Regarding food, Colombians in average should spend about 1,000, more or less 700. In home, they say watch TV, use the lights, cook, those or iron your clothes. That energy that we spend at home during the year should be about 250, should produce 250 kilograms of emissions of carbon dioxide. And regarding transportation, so the gasoline that is used to move from one place to the other per year should be 500% of emissions of CO2. What we have on the left is what 10 students answered regarding those emissions. So if we want to get to conclusions, to summarize the information, so we could see, for example, that the gray and the blue bars are the ones that are higher. So we could say that almost all the students produce a lot of CO2 emissions in activities related to transportation and food. And we could say that few students produce CO2 emissions regarding purchases, so that purchases for those students are very few, right? And regarding the orange bar, we could say that some students, we have some students really spend a lot of energy or have high emissions of CO2 compared to the average in Colombia. What else can we say if we want to use these quantifiers and if we want to use this information? What else could we say? What conclusions can we get?
That nearly all the students produce CO2 in transportation, home, and food.
Exactly, very good. Any other?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Most of people emit CO2 produced by food.
Produced by activities related to food.
Yeah.
Good. What else? Here we have the quantifiers. No one, few, not many, hardly any, some, many, most, nearly all, and all.
The student 5 produce a lot of CO2 in the transportation and home. Excuse me, transportation and food.
Very good. Is there any student who produces less emissions of CO2 compared to the average for Colombians?
Well, the student 4
Student
produces less CO2 by activities related to transportation.
No, produces more because transportation is the blue bar and the
The
average
blue
is
one.
this one. So student 4 produces more. No, you are right. You are right. Yes. So here we have
Less.
very good. What else?
Less. Less than
What can we conclude about emissions related to activities related to purchases compared to Colombians? If we see all the yellow bars, what is the tendency?
Teacher, can be many students.
Emit less CO2 produced by purchases.
Okay.
Can I say that?
Yes. Emit, for example, student 1, student 3, 4, 6, 7, and then they produce less emissions of CO2 than the average of Colombians in terms of purchases. Regarding home, what is the conclusion if we want to see what happens with the whole 10 students compared to the average of Colombians?
Some students produce CO2 in the orange bar, that is home, in the home.
At home.
At home, in comparison, in the average for Colombians.
So, but what is the, when you compare, what are you saying? That is more or that is less than the average?
More.
Okay, so your conclusion is that
That is more.
But how many students? A lot, some, many, nearly all.
I can see a lot of students.
Okay. So a lot of students produce more CO2 emissions at home
At home, yes.
compared to the average for Colombians.
Yes, teacher.
Very good. And what about the blue bar? What is the tendency compared to the average for Colombians?
Increase of a lot of students.
Okay, so again, a lot of students produce more CO2 in transportation than the average for Colombians. And the gray bar
Be that most of Colombians spend more money in food than the other categories, transportation, home purchases.
Okay, but this is not money, but CO2 emissions.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so again, Clara,
It's very
what is
have money in my mind. Yeah, Colombian, most of Colombia eh, produce in food than the other categories.
okay, so yes, could be more. Okay, I will say that since we have here the gray bar, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 students out of 10 have more emissions than the average of Colombians. So Clara was saying that is that the average Colombians or the average for Colombia regarding CO2 emissions related to food is higher compared to the students that were serving. So that 6 students from this graph spend less or produce less carbon dioxide in food, in activities related to food, than the average for Colombians. So probably here there are people who don't eat a lot of meat or who don't eat food that comes from other countries, that eat the food that is from Colombia. So that reduces the emissions of CO2. Good. You have questions about this topic?
Yeah.
Do you understand how to use those quantifiers? No questions
Oh.
about this?
Yes, I'm not sure, but I would like to know if these quantifiers could be used in count and uncount pronouns.
For countable or uncountable. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Or
I'm thinking about it. An example with an uncountable. Yes, for example, with some, we can use uncountables. We can say there are some, there is some rice in the kitchen. There is some rice in the kitchen. I'm not saying how much exactly. I'm not saying 1 bag, 2 bags of rice, but just rice. So there is some rice in the kitchen. The quantifier for uncountables that replaces few is a little. So you could say there is little milk in the refrigerator, right? But if you are going to use a countable, you use few, right? And with uncountable, little. There is little, let's say, there is little water left in the swimming pool. Yes, you know that we cannot count water if it's not into a container. So I'm just saying that the amount of water in the swimming pool is not a lot. So there is little. And if I want to use it with countable, I would say there are few apples in the kitchen.
okay, we cannot say there are little
Apples, no, it's not possible.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Good. Any other question?
Teacher,
Did
I need to know about confusing verbs.
Which ones?
Confusing verb, teacher. Say to expect, to wait. Next way.
Yes, expect, and which other? Okay, I heard till you say expect and hope. What happens in English is that sometimes we have more than one word for something that we use one word in Spanish. So in English we have expect and hope and wait. In Spanish we have just one, that is esperar, right? But in English we use 3 verbs. Okay, in English we use 3 verbs for different situations. Hope for something that is a feeling. So I hope you are okay. In Spanish, we will use the same word. So we will use espero que estés bien. Right? But this is a feeling, it's an emotion. I am expressing an emotion. Now, wait. Wait is used for situations in which something is, let's say,
Please wait.
yes, but that means that
For
that
talk.
you can touch it now, but you can is
Time, maybe.
well, yeah, it's an action related to time. It's physical. That's what I wanted to say. So, example, I'll wait for 5 minutes. So the physical action of waiting, the translation will be esperaré por 5 minutos o esperaré 5 minutos, right? So it's related to time and it's physical. And now expect, an expectation is something that
Expectation.
something that you want. That the person wants to happen. So the example will be, I expect to learn, let's say, German. I live in Berlin. So the translation will be, espero aprender alemán mientras vivo en Berlín. Yes, so the thing is that we have one word in Spanish and 3 different words in English that are used depending on the situation. If it's something that is physical related to time, if it's a feeling, or if it's a wish, or a... Okay, do you have any example for expect? An example for expect.
I expect to speak fluid.
With who? Tirnalda, could you repeat?
Fluid, teacher.
I expect to speak with?
No.
To speak fluid this semester.
I expect to speak. Could you repeat, please?
Fluid, teacher. Fluid.
Wow. Okay, now an example with hope.
I hope my mother feels better soon.
Huh? Good. And an example with wait.
I have wait to 5 minutes and take my to take the bus.
Very good.
5 minutes. Take the bus. Yes.
Very good. I have to wait 5 minutes to take the bus. Okay, very good. Any other question?
Yes, teacher.
Yes,
I'm so
Nana, tell
sorry.
me. No, it's okay.
On the platform, there is a test for this week, and we have to watch a video. My question is, this video is on the test, or there is a link for I can watch the video before.
Okay, I am going to publish the link so you can watch the video before you take the question. I will do it after the encounter. Also, you asked me, Ignalda, about Turnitin. Turnitin is when you publish your tasks, you see a message in the screen that tells you that you didn't submitted your task for Turnitin. That's not a problem. It's okay. So it doesn't mean that your task was not published in the virtual room. Turnitin is a program to check plagiarism if you wrote the task or if you copy from internet. Yes, so it doesn't matter if you don't accept Turnitin or if you accept it. When you publish the task, you will always see that message on the screen.
Okay, teacher. Thank you.
Teacher?
Yes.
Last week, when I uploaded my task in the Moodle platform, said that it wasn't available to reproduce my audio file. So I don't know if you can hear me, my audio file, or if I send you it by email or.
No, I could hear it. I heard it, and I already you already have the feedback in the virtual room.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
It's because of Turnitin. It's because of that. So don't worry about it.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
Thank you.
Any other question? Okay, so email me if you have questions about the task that you have this week. And well, I'm gonna stop the counter now. Okay, so hopefully we'll see again next week.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye,
Good
classmates.
night.
Gerson. Se fue.